all you guys back at the back row Baptists over there.
Sure.
So, thank you guys for coming out tonight. We have Sheriff Chody. Where'd he go?
So he had to make a phone call.
Oh, okay. We'll have Sheriff Chody in a couple of minutes, and unfortunately, he's got something going on job-wise that he's going to have to leave after he talks to us a little bit. So he's going to talk a little, and then we'll have Constable Sharon up here to talk to us. I'm sure a lot of you guys know Vinny. He used to be with the Round Rock Police Department, and we're glad to have him as our constable now. So we'll have them up here talking about nothing specific, just kind of, they're both new to the office this year, and kind of tell us what's been going on, what they've been doing, and how what they do affects our neighborhood and so forth. So thank you guys for coming out. Real quick, I don't have any specific updates right now as of Silent Crossings. You guys obviously see all the work going on 620, okay? And there's a lot of work going on right now that you don't see that side of Deepwood over toward the railroad tracks and stuff. So they're starting to acquiring right away, starting to work on utility stuff and so forth to start the Nightmare project that's going to go on for about 2.5 to 3 years. So the big traffic circle over the railroad tracks and all that good stuff. So you'll start seeing more of that. Yes, we had a meeting about that. I saw the look on your faces. We'll have them back in here before long to show the plans about all that and how it all works and so forth. So those of you that, a couple of new faces on Mike Freeman, lifetime appointment apparently to president of the neighborhood association. And you guys all have my phone number, so if there's any issues or anything, you can always call me, and we'll certainly try to work through things. And Silent Railroad crossings, no changes yet, still this winter. Looks like they'll get started on them in the winter because of like we said, all the Union Pacific people are up north working while it's warm, and then when it freezes over up there, they come down here to God's country and work. So, pardon any northerners here. That was from a native text, I'm sorry. I lived up north for about a year, 1 week. I decided not to stay there. Okay, any other questions before we get started here? About what's going on? I know it's been quiet. I haven't been getting a lot of emails or a lot of Facebook chatter or anything about any problems, so I'm guessing everything's going good. And usually if there's problems, we have a room full of people. So considering we've got law enforcement here and a sparse crowd, that's good news. So, Sheriff, you want to come up and just talk for a few minutes, and again, just share what's been going on since you took office, and kind of what you guys are doing and how we as a neighborhood can help you guys.
Sure. Hello, good evening. Thank you for having us. Real quick, just a little bit. I don't know if any of you all know me or anything, and no reason to, I don't guess, but I used to be the constable in Precinct 1, and currently you have Constable Vinny Sharon, who beat me. Actually, he didn't run against me. I stepped down to run for sheriff, but I used to be also a police officer as well, and been in office at the sheriff's office about 6 months now. We're going on 7 months. We're doing a lot of changes at the sheriff's office. It is my opinion, and I think most of the opinion of the over 500 employees there, that we've had a lot of staticness in the sheriff's department. They haven't been doing a lot of proactivity involving in the community. What I mean by that is we've reorganized the whole unit. I'll give you some examples. Prior to us taking office, we didn't have a full-time SWAT team. And that's important because prior to us taking office, if you were taken hostage or something in that event, you had a SWAT team that wasn't training together. You had some of the SWAT team, the part-time SWAT team was on day shift, some was on night shift. So essentially you could have a sniper on night shift and a assault team member on day shift, and if they ever get called out and you're the hostage and you want that person to take the shot because they're going to try and save your life, they've never trained together in over 1.5 years. And if that's my child or that's me, I kind of want them to have a little bit of training. Now, prior to that, they weren't even taking SWAT calls, really. They hadn't taken one for, I think it was 18 months. As soon as we took office, we said we want to remedy that because, one, we want to be self-reliant because the cities don't necessarily take care of the county. We said, without getting new people, we said, how do we get a full-time SWAT team? We took all the current SWAT team members and said, you guys are all going to day shift. We're going to make your primary duties in training, fugitive units, and training, fugitive unit. and CTAC, which is basically a proactive response to any community event, let's say burglaries. If you're having burglaries there's a bunch of burglaries in the neighborhood, and we know that, we can take that unit, SWAT members, and say, hey, we want you to do surveillance in this area at 2 in the morning till 5 in the morning. We use the SWAT team members to do that. That's their full-time job. Now, if they get called out for a SWAT call, they just put on their gear and they go to the SWAT call out. Since we took office and since we implemented that, I think we've taken 7 SWAT call-outs, something like that. I know we took one the very first week or two we were in office. One was a potential hostage. So, I mean, that was one thing we did with the SWAT team. We reorged the CID, the Criminal Investigations Unit. We became part of the task force. We were not part of any task force with the exception of the U.S. Marshal Task Force. And what I mean by that is we become part of some of the federal task force, such as the FBI, DA, if that's what we chose to, and other federal agencies, and that helps us in this area. Let me use the FBI, for example. Every agency in the Central Texas part of Texas is part of the task force. And what that does, and if I use the marshals, for example, if we have a homicide suspect in Round Rock, Texas, and we need to take that person down, we can dedicate officers to looking for that homicide suspect if you're on the U.S. Marshal Task Force. So they will essentially get the Round Rock U.S. Marshal Task Force member, that's a Round Rock police officer, he's assigned to the task force. He'll go to the U.S. Marshal people, say, hey, I'm here. Then now the Williamson County Task Force Marshal person will go and say, hey, I'm here. And they will work together, and they work together all the time. They know each other. They have part of the resources that the marshals have. They work with them on a regular basis. And they essentially not work for the marshals, but they're with them all the time. And they'll go across to Austin, to Round Rock, to Georgetown. We all help each other out. So it's a way that we can maximize our personnel by using other personnel too, using federal resources to an extent. So it helps the community out in that aspect. So we weren't part of any task force with the exception of the U.S. Marshal. But now we're part of the FBI task force, and they have a few task force that, terrorism is another task force, the JTTF, it's called the Joint Terrorism. I won't go too much into that, okay? But it's something important as a community we should be a part of. We're getting information that we should know in our community. Proactive things that we're doing in the community is we're reaching out in social media. If you're not following us on social media, I would encourage that. Williams County Sheriff's Office, or Williams County Sheriff Robert Chody is my Facebook. I do everything on Facebook. I let you know what we're doing when we make an arrest, car accident. I use it religiously. Twitter, we do that as well. It's a good way to put out that information instantly to the community. Currently we're putting on a junior program, Explorer program, which was not part of the program before. We're getting ready to do one of those for kids who want to look at law enforcement as a potential career. We started today a youth program for summer camp, basically for kids that everybody does except the sheriff's office until today. First time we've been full in our jail as correction officers, fully staffed in our jail since we've been in office, and they haven't been full as correction officers for years. We still need more people, but that's because we're maximizing staffing. But due to the population, the court needs to get us more people. It's plain and simple. And they need to give them a raise. To be honest, look at what they make. They do a hard job, and we pay them very little, to be completely honest with you. And I'm a conservative. I'm just telling you, you get what you pay for as a conservative. You get what you pay for. Okay. We're competing with people like Austin PD. Round Rock just got a huge raise. We're competing with that on the patrol side as well, but we need to get corrections taken care of before we roll out patrol. We just looked at reorganizing our patrol shifts, and there's a sergeant here now, but I went and rode out with my patrol shifts about a month ago to see how our response times were and our resources were being utilized. We were seeing some vacancies, and we were short on one shift and heavy on another shift, and it was a scheduling issue that one of our commanders was dropping the ball on. But at one point we had, I think it was, because I don't want to give all numbers on how many people we have out at one night for practical reasons, but I think our lowest was 7 deputies patrolling Williamson County over 1,100 square miles of officer service. That was our shortest shift, 7 deputies. And I did not find that out until I wrote it out. And when I found that out, I fixed it. And it was too bad that I had to go out there to find that out. Because I was being told everything, trust me, people pay the price. And we did some rearranging in our command staff. And so when I say fix something, it needs to be fixed because you were paying a price for it. Let me tell you why you're paying. Because if you live in the county and you're calling 911, and my deputy's in Liberty Hill, and then he's doing another call in Leander, and then you need him over here, at one point it's going to catch up where time is of the essence. If you're calling for help, at some point it's going to hurt you as a community. So now we're fully staffed on all our night shifts. We're fully staffed, and that was just recently. It took us that long to figure that out because we also have issues in the jail too. But I'm just doing this off the top of my head, shooting from the hip. So if you have questions, I'd be more than happy to answer anything that's relevant to this viewpoint.
I do SWAT team. Do any of the cities have their own SWAT teams, or does the county SWAT team handle the whole county, city?
Prior to me getting in office, Round Rock has a SWAT team, and I think that was kind of in, Sheriff's Department had a SWAT team. But because of the non-willingness to participate with each other, the cities like Leander, Cedar Park, and Georgetown said, hey, if the Sheriff's Department's not going to cover us the way they should, we're going to be forced to do something. So they did, and they did something pretty unique, Georgetown, Leander, Cedar Park. What they did is they said, okay, the three of us, Cedar Park, Georgetown, Leander, we're going to get together and we're going to form a regional SWAT team, and we'll take calls of SWAT calls. So you essentially had a SWAT team. If you get a SWAT call out in Leander, it could have members from Georgetown PD on it, Cedar Park, and Leander. So they had all three agencies on it. So they won't call for our services. But that's what happened before I got. Now, the good thing about having someone like me in office, someone like Vinny Sharona, all your Central Texas law enforcement right now get along very well with one another. That's everybody from Chief Manley. I had a speaking engagement in Austin today, and me and Chief Manley were talking together to a group of people, and that's a positive thing because I utilize some of his resources. He utilizes some of my resources. Believe it or not, he needs us too, and we utilize each other. And that wasn't always the case. When we talk about the Austin Regional Intelligence Center down there, we use that. So it's important that your leaders are talking with one another because we've never had this. And you may not have seen it from your point of view, but we have never had Central Texas law enforcement get along like this and maintain relationships because when Constable Sharon needs something, he'll call. If I need something, we had an issue with a bus issue with Roundel, a bus issue with cars running some bus stops that I saw on the news. It was our area. I was laughing at Chief Bank because he needs to take care of his business. It was our area. I didn't know that. It was so close to the same line. I said, too bad it got on the news because Chief Banks didn't take care of his business. And I go, oh, that's in the county. And so I immediately called the person who put it on the news. And then I already looked on Facebook, and Vinny and his guys were on Facebook and said, hey, we can help out with this. And I said, hey, Vinny, let me wipe the egg off my face first. And then if you want to take over, you can. I kind of wish I'd let him took it because, but the point is he could have just went over and said, hey, I'll do it. But he was being polite, saying, hey, I know this is your jurisdiction per se. And I want to help, and I've got the time to do it. And I said, hey, we kind of did a lot of this already. I've got some patrol issues. If you want to do it, you can. So that's why that's important. He has a passion. I have a passion to serve the community. And that's exactly what you got in Central Texas.
We
A lot of
need the
people
good
don't-
guys to get along.
We
A
do.
lot of people don't realize there's a huge chunk of the city of Austin that's in Williamson County.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Big chunk
Absolutely.
of it. So on the response things, because we have a lot of this in Round Rock. I don't know if Georgetown has the same problem. We got a lot of donut holes, okay? Meaning areas that are
Yes.
islands that are not city of Round Rock that you guys have to cover. So like you guys are normally covering these things, right? So you guys have to come in and cover those. Is there any possibility of like teaming up with the city of Round Rock? Because
We do that already, and it's call specific too.
Right.
If you're calling because your bike got stolen, we're putting
Different.
that on the back burner. And,
Different,
and our people, if it's in the
But
county,
immediate crimes, they'll jump on.
right? If it's something where it's a serious
Burglary
issue
or going on
that
or
we
something.
think that somebody's at risk, then and we're tied up or we're a far distance, the first thing our sergeant or lieutenant on the street will say, it'll say, dispatch, will you see if Round Rock is close, and if they can start that way until we get there, we'd appreciate it. And Round Rock will be right on site.
Because some of them are like deep in Round Rock.
Absolutely, absolutely.
And I noticed that in real estate. I'm looking at some stuff and I'm going,
One thing
wow.
that we're looking at too is doing, and this is new for us, is I listen to my patrol people, and they say, the sergeants and the supervisors say, hey, we need to look at redistricting the county, because you start realizing after roads are being put up, hey, what are the fastest areas, where's the biggest call loads? Because one thing that you're not privy to, and I'm not trying to knock the past administration, but I'm going to tell you the truth, they dropped the ball in a lot of areas. It's just a plain truth. And I think we're doing a great job, but it's easy to look like you're doing a great job when there's so many things broken, plain and simple. But when we talk about call loads, if you'd have asked me 4 months ago, and I know most of this is around, but if you were asking me this was county, how many calls have we taken of burglaries here in this area? I would look at you and go, we can't get you that information. We just don't have any way to do that. Unless I called 1 or 2 specific people out of 500 employees, only 1 or 2 people could give me that information. But now, I can get you that information. Now, I can't get you to here because I tried and it's in Round Rock, so that's Round Rock.
Oh, we can get ours.
That's okay, I can call Round Rock, they can give it to me. But my point is, we couldn't do that. That's because we're so far behind in that aspect. But we've been able to catch up in that area. So, but the other areas that we've been able to do that, you heard him say that that response team we're talking about. That's some of the proactivity we're trying to do. If you have a problem in your neighborhood that's not being addressed because patrol can't sit there and watch, that we have a lot of issues with UPS or FedEx dropping off boxes during Christmas and people coming up to the porch and taking them off. So one of the things that we do with that response team is say, hey, we know it's that time of year. Instead of using our CID unit, our criminal investigation detectives, instead of having them come out and do surveillance because they're working cases, like the stolen bike or the rapes or the murders or whatever it is, we can utilize that response team and say, hey, you're going to be out here because it's a holiday season. You're going to look in areas that you think this could happen. They'll be patrolling around in an unmarked car. You may even call the police on them because you think somebody's patrolling them. And that's fine. We want you to do that. But that's something that's called proactive police work. And that's what you want, because when they do grab that box and immediately an officer's out there making an arrest, then you're like, hey, we're on top of it. And if you have someone who has that passion from the top down, I'm telling you, the employees that we have, they buy into it. They've been waiting for this. And because we have some great employees at Williams County. We have a few that we're still working on and maybe we can't help, but the majority of our employees, they've been waiting for this and they're chomping at the bit and they're doing a fantastic job. And I'll say one more thing if you have other questions. One thing that we're real proud of that we're doing is called the cold case unit. You may have heard about it. And if you haven't, we have a dozen cold cases here in Williams County. And as I was campaigning, 2 families of the cold cases approached me. One was Janet Cook, whose daughter's missing, Rachel Cook, that you all probably know. Another one was a Taylor family called the Ritchie family. And her grandfather, Mr. Ritchie, was assaulted in his driveway after he got off the Taylor business in Taylor and eventually died from his wounds. So we have a dozen cold cases, all of them murders with the exception, I think, 2 that aren't solved. 15, 20 years or something. No leads, no nothing. In the past, they haven't been worked at all. And if that's your family member, I'm not promising we're going to solve it, but I'm promising that we're looking at them, and I'm promising that we're letting the families know if we're getting anywhere or if we have nothing at all. And the 2 families that I've had contact with, we've let them know. We say, hey, this is what we got. We had a lead with Rachel Cook's case that you may have saw the news on, and people, get concerned, which I understand that her hopes get up and then they get down. And let me tell you, they do. She's a trooper. Janet Cook is a trooper. She's been through this 100 times. And before that media found out about it, I called her 2 days before that because I knew it was possible. And I said, hey, just so you know, we got a tip.
You got to look at it. You have to look at it.
I have a duty to look at it. I have to, because I don't want Janet Cook coming up to me and saying, why didn't you check this area? That's where she was the whole time. And I can't go to her and say, well, I didn't think it was true. It was an incredible person. I had to check. So what I do is I reach out to her 2 days before this came out and said, hey, here's what we're doing, don't get your hopes up, we're just gonna check the box and make sure. But I want you to know in case the media finds out. She goes, okay, thank you. And it's simple as that. She knows we're looking. She knows we're not just taking a tip and putting it in the drawer, which was happening before. Same thing with the Richie case. Now, you're going to hear the Rachel Cook case gets much more attention than the other thing. It doesn't mean we're not working the cases. But what we've done is, it's somewhat unique, but it's not completely unique. Reserve officers, you've heard that before? Reserve officer is nothing unique in law enforcement. I can hire an officer who's already been through an academy to work for me for free because he still wants to work at Dell or she wants to work at Dell. But they want to drive 100 miles an hour one day a month. I'll let you do that. You can still work at Dell. You can drive 100 miles an hour one day a month, and in return, you work for me for free. That's what a reserve is. It's completely traditional that they do that on the patrol side. Occasionally, you'll hear across the country they'll do it in where they investigate. So it's somewhat unique that I just said, hey, we're going to use reserves to do investigation. I just want people with investigative experience. I didn't know if we would get a interest, to be honest with you. But the media reached out to me and heard about it. And when they said that, I asked them to hold off because I wasn't ready for it. And I contacted the families first. And then I said, hey, I'll use the media to promote it, to try to get people, because I didn't, anybody know anything about retirees? First of all, retirees are sometimes the hardest working people I know. But retired cops are sometimes the most
Bulldogs.
What?
Bulldogs.
Okay, that's a better term. Thank you. Bulldogs. I'll say bulldog. But they can't wait to retire. But I found out they can't wait to retire. They can't wait to help again after 25, 30 years of service. They can't wait. And we had, I think, 20 or 25 put in an application to work for free. And we have a dozen, like 13 now, 13 or 14. But we have, and they're all in Wilco except one in Burnett County. But the experience we're getting, we can't even get from our county. We've got people from Houston PD who, this guy did 46 homicides in 1 year, every year. We have a female detective, or was a detective, who was in Florida. She did over 200 homicide investigations. We have 2 federal agents. We have an LA County guy who did homicide investigations working here, and I got him for free. If that doesn't help you in tax-based stuff, I don't know what does. As a conservative, I'm already re-elect Robert Chauvin. Is what I'm saying. But my point is I can't pay for that experience anywhere, and they're doing it for free, and they're giving families hope that at least we're trying. Now, what also came out of this was TV producers liked what they heard. When I say TV producers, they just went on the newswire after they did the story here, and 7 TV producers contacted me. They want to do a TV show on it. And I've got a face for radio, so I said, why are y'all laughing when I say that? But initially I was against that idea because I don't want to really use this opportunity to try to solve this here. But then I started thinking, this is an opportunity to reach out to a community, not just here, but out of state, all across the U.S. if it was to be picked up. It hasn't been picked up. But there are people who moved out of Williamson County the day after Rachel Cook went missing, if we're just using her as an example, who live in Washington State, who live in New York City, who could have potentially seen a case if this show was picked up and say, you know what, I didn't know this was going on, or I heard this information. Hey, I'm going to call them. It could break the case wide open.
Dateline Wilco.
Absolutely. So after that, I said, you know what, I'll at least entertain looking at these TV reviews. I spoke to 3 of them. 3 of them came down, 2 of them I interviewed by phone. And I liked one of them because he had one thing that I actually came up with when I talked to my chief. You all know my chief deputy, Tim Rao. Used to be the chief around Rao. That's my chief deputy, just so you know. Great guy. But I was talking to Chief Rao, but this TV producer didn't know it. But I asked him, I said, why do you want to do this show? It's one question. He said, well, he said, obviously, we want to do it for ratings, for one. He goes, but 2, he goes, I think you're in a win-win situation, Sheriff. I said, why? He goes, because, and I said this exactly almost to Chief Rao a week before this. He said, because if this gets out and you just get information that takes a suspect off the list, or you get information that puts a suspect on the list, or a witness off the list, because you win. And he's absolutely right. If you're on the list as a suspect and I take you off, you're gonna be pretty happy about that. So am I, because I'm not gonna utilize resources now to investigate you. So that's a win for us, just by the show. So I said, you're right. And I said, I like your thinking. We're going with you. So we had to sign a contract. We're not getting any money for it. I'm sure they will if it's picked up, and that's fine. And I talked to the families about it. I said, hey, it takes money to make things go. I said, but we're not getting anything. I refused it. I would not want a dime from this. I told the deputies involved, I said, if you guys take any money on this, we're done with the show. And because we're not going to profit off this. Now, if it gets picked up and they become famous, I don't know what they do. They do a spin-off or whatever. But they're going to be pitching it. They just finished filming yesterday to do the trailer.
Just one show, or is it going to be a series?
Well, they kind of changed a little bit how they're going to do it. But they're presenting a 5-minute trailer to the networks in a couple months. I think they're initially going to start off with one case now. Initially, they were going to do all cases. But I think they want to try and tell a story, which I kind of like that idea because they can get as much information as possible.
Which
We don't know if the network, that's if any network pick it up. So I'm hoping that kind of goes, to be honest with you. So with that said, if you have any questions.
I'll just say real quick, I have seen all the things you have done in the paper, the news, and these cold cases, and I applaud you for that. I think that's great. I've seen that. I am on the school board, the Round Rock School Board, so I know about that bus passing up there, so I did not know. That's a thing that's interesting, very interesting for everybody. There's, I wish there was a line on the street everywhere that said, you're now in Williamson County, you're in Travis County, you're in the city of Austin, you're in the city of Round Rock, you're in a mud, whatever. It'd be great. Of course, you can't do that. But anyway, I applaud you for that. And I also will say this, that the SROs, the school resource officers, all of our high schools have at least 2. And I think you have, a dozen or so SROs on our campuses. They do a phenomenal job.
They do.
They reach out to the students. They're like counselors, and they catch these kids long before. So Sharif, Casey, I think I heard is good. What's that?
Sharif had a family emergency.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm sorry to hear that. I'll text him. Anyway, Sharif, I think Casey, he said, is on the CID now. Ben, Ron, Cole, all of them just a phenomenal job. They put football games. They are just it's phenomenal to have them there. So I hope we continue all of that. So yeah.
One other thing, and you heard the sheriff mention a minute ago. Of course, they can't go into a terrorism and homeland security. As much as we want to deny it, that we're a little town, we're not a little town anymore. Okay, we're growing and growing, and we're at 110,000 about now. We're going to build out about 250,000, and we're on the busiest freeway in the country. So that's going to be, it's just going to feed right into that. So it's important that we have those people doing that stuff.
So and I'll finish with saying this, okay? You asked what you can do for us. And if you listen to me, this is what I would ask that you take away from this meeting. As an elected official, I get my money from the Commissioner's Court. If you're in the city as a chief, you go to the city council, and your boss is the mayor or the city manager, and they appoint you. I don't report to anybody except to the Commissioner's Court for money. Sometimes that conflicts, my interest with their interest, with the road or, another department.
You're talking about budget for the sheriff's department.
Right. And I don't agree with a lot of things that the court does sometimes. I can be told no, and that's okay. But I will tell you, there's going to be a time when I, as the sheriff, am going to be vocal about some issues when they talk about funding for the sheriff's department. And I am hoping you will listen. And I will ask you to follow me on Facebook, because I'm not here to make friends. I signed up for 4 years, and I signed up to be your sheriff 4 years. I hope to get more than that, because right now my desire hasn't changed to leave after 4 years. But if that means I make enemies politically along the way, that's fine. Then I can move on. But we have a duty to you as a community to give you the best services, public safety, and I think we're giving you a shortfall on that right now. And I'm doing everything we can with scheduling, with putting our, with the shifts. When I told you, hey, we'll pad the shift over here and pad the shift over here, but the correctional officer doing everything we can with the, with scheduling and things of that nature, with 12-hour shifts versus 8-hour shifts, and we're moving all that around, paying overtime. This year we're paying $1.2 million in overtime for correctional officers. If we had more correctional officers, we wouldn't have to pay that much overtime. And I'm getting off track of it, but I want to tell you real quick, in overtime, we had, today at court, we had to go get approved for more overtime because they're used to us staffing at minimum staffing. So they're not used to us going to them for more overtime. I will not allow my officers to go in there with minimum staffing when we're already approved for full staffing, when we have an opportunity to, one, put more people on the floor to better protect them and better protect the inmates that I am charged with. If that is your family member that is arrested for a simple Class C offense and my officers can't provide service to them because they're short, you're going to be mad at me, rightfully so. But then I'm going to say, I don't have the people. And then you're going to say, well, you're at minimum staffing, you're authorized more. And I'm going to say, you're right. I'm not going over what we have in staffing. I'm filling every spot we have. But we still need overtime because they need days off. They're losing their vacation. They're accruing a vacation, but they can't take it because they're losing. And more importantly, they're losing training. We have a promotional process started that I implemented. I'm not requiring anything from them except the best practices that we implemented at statewide, saying if you want to be sergeant, this is the minimum standard. They don't even meet the minimum standard because they haven't done the basic training, the basic classes. We have sergeant supervisors that are mandated by law to have a first line supervisor class who've been there for 5 years as supervisor, haven't even had that class yet. That's a liability to you as a taxpayer because when they do something wrong and we get sued, taxpayers are paying for that. So my point is this. When you hear me start screaming and yelling, saying we need this, or we need more funding, or this or that, I'm not looking for money because I just want more money. We have a need at the Sheriff's Office for better services, for my deputies to be better equipped, to have the right equipment when they're facing terrorists. Because when you're in that mall and they have just a shotgun, and the terrorist has an AR-15, that shotgun is not going to protect you. The AR-15 is going to win it. And then you're going to be the victim and go, what happened? I'm going to say, hey, you didn't follow me on Facebook. I was telling you, you need to.
What he's saying is, when he starts screaming, we need to start screaming.
Contact you, listen to what I'm saying. And if you have a question, just ask me. Say, why are you screaming about that? I don't get it. I will sit down and schedule a time to talk with you over breakfast and tell you what my concern was. If you promise me, you'll give me a fair chance to tell you my concerns and why those are occurring. And if you'll take that to the commissioner and say, hey, I support the sheriff in this. Now, if you don't support me in it, don't call the commissioner. But hey, I got another matter at the jail that I have to deal with, but I did not want to miss this meeting. I wanted to come today. I don't want you to think I'm being rude, but I have to address it. But I appreciate your time today, and please follow us on Facebook. If you shoot me a message on Facebook, I will personally answer the message. Could be a couple hours, but I will answer it.
Thanks, sir.
Because anytime I've ever, if something came up to my house or someone, you've helped me out too. But if I call,
I'm not supposed to do that.
if I call, you were just walking down the street and I waved at you. But whenever I have ever called and had any problems, because I used to be a little bit afraid. I'm not afraid in my neighborhood at all. But I think y'all do an outstanding job. And I do feel like they do need to provide the staff that you need so that you can run your whole business the way it should be.
Yes, ma'am. Thank
But
you.
I think that, and I think, and we'll probably agree with me, we live on the same street, but I have no fear,
That's one of my patrol sergeants right there. You'd think him and his crew, he works at night.
He lives in our
right there.
neighborhood.
And he lives around here.
Here's the other thing, there are several that live on that neighborhood. I'm not the least bit afraid of that.
Hey, if he gets out of line though, you tell me.
I will.
And she saw someone else that wouldn't be. All right, and now we're going to turn it over to Constable.
Hi, like you said, my name is Vinny Sharon. I'm a 26-year law enforcement. My first 2.5 years I spent at the Precinct 1 Constable's office when it was just a constable and me. And then I went to, I did 21.5 years at Round Rock PD. Most of that was in traffic. I spent 17 years in traffic, 3.5 years in patrol, and 1.5 years in community affairs. But before Robert leaves, I do have to tell you that I could not have followed somebody in this job and been more grateful for the way that he left the office, because although he did take a few guys with him, he did leave me with, there's only one of 2 constables' offices in the state of Texas that's recognized as best practices. It's like the accreditation that Round Rock goes through every 4 years. He got that started. I'm continuing it, but none of this stuff could have been done. And honestly, I couldn't be where I am 6.5 months in this job without him leaving it the way he did, and I think he deserves a round of applause for that. And like he did say, I just want to give you a little bit of, so police and sheriff's office are all, they handle all criminal law enforcement. The constable's office handles all civil law enforcement, which means that we serve civil papers that come out of the JP court or any attorney that sends us papers and that's in our precinct. And I don't know if you all know how the precincts are broke up, but there's 4 in Williamson County. Precinct 1, which is what you live in, goes from McNeil Road and 183 all the way down to the old 1325, the county line, 35 north, a little bit of downtown Round Rock, out by where the annex is, a little bit of Eagles Nest, out 1431 to Brushy Bend subdivision, if you know where that is. Then it cuts back in down to Harryman Road or Brush Creek Road to Parmer, and then Parmer all the way to 620, with the exception of a little bit of the Avery Ranch that's on the west side of Parmer. So it's a very condensed area, it's a very large area. As you guys know, I mean, you've been here probably as long as I have. I've been here since '85 when there was 30,000 people, and there's a lot of apartment complexes, there's a lot of Section 8 housing that are in those apartment complexes. We have a lot of frequent flyers that we serve every month. But I want to say something before I get started. It's an honor to serve you as your constable. I did bring a couple of my command staff guys with me, Chief Deputy Mike Penley, Lieutenant Mike Carlson. Mike has 40 years of law enforcement. He spent 27 years down at APD, took a few years off, and he's been with the constable's office since then. Mike has got, 14? And Mike's always been in civil. He worked at Travis County Precinct 2, and then he came over, worked at Precinct 4 for a little while, and then came over in March last year. So I've been blessed, let me tell you. 6.5 months in, I could not have asked to be where we're at right now. We're fully staffed. I have 8 deputies and 3 office staff. And like Robert said, him and I communicate weekly. I communicate with Chief Banks monthly. I communicate with Chief Manley at Austin PD because some of Austin is in our precinct. I communicate with him monthly. Chief Minton out of Liberty Hill, I communicate with him monthly. We have monthly meetings that we go to. And the constables of all 4 precincts in Williamson County started meeting monthly on a regular basis when I came in January. That was one thing that I said that I wanted to do, was to make sure that all of us are on the same page, because although our offices operate differently, we all ask for money from the same pot that we all, as a Williamson County resident, pay. Okay. So when it comes to the budget stuff, we actually cut our budget this year a little bit until they told me they were going to replace 5 of my cars. So actually our budget went up about $100,000, but it's only because we needed cars. We actually cut it about $200,000. But we're rocking and rolling. We have, we do traffic enforcement. Our main function is to get our civil paper served, which I had a meeting with the commissioner Friday. So as of Monday, we've served 1,898 papers for 8 people. Because every once in a while I get out and do that, but I'm usually in meetings or doing something else. We have 8 people that serve 1,898 papers. Now that's just the service. Most of those papers require 2 or 3 attempts to find those people at home, at work, or wherever, okay? So I asked for another person in the budget this year because the workload has gone up 20% from 2016. We haven't had a new person in the office since 2011, okay? So I asked for a new person. The commissioner came in Friday, she was talking to me, and by the way, I gotta give her kudos. She's the only commissioner that came and asked me what I needed, okay? And it was only on one position, but she at least cared to come and talk to me about it. We don't have an overtime budget. I have no overtime. My guys do not get paid for overtime. They either have to, if they work overtime or work extra jobs or work extra in this job, they have to flex their time out, which means I lose them next week for those 2 or 3 hours that they worked the previous week. So when she came and we were talking, there's 2 programs. One program that the sheriff doesn't do anymore, that the tax assessor collector came to me and asked if we do it, and that's collecting hot checks for them. It's not a lot. It's maybe, he told me 12 a year. We've already done 3 in 3 weeks, but we'll see how that goes. So that's another extra job that we took on to provide services for the county and the county tax assessor collector. Also, Round Rock is doing a site release program right now, where if you have less than 2 grams of 2 ounces, whatever, I don't know, ounces, grams, whatever it is. If you have less than 2 ounces of marijuana, or your license is suspended and you get stopped, you get a ticket, they release you, you get a court date to go to the county attorney's office. If you don't show up for court, the warrants come to us. We're the only constable's office that's doing it right now because the pilot program is mainly only in the city of Round Rock, and most of my precinct is in the Round Rock, except for the far southeast corner. So those are extra duties we took on. So I asked for another person, and she was hemming and hawing about it, and I said, listen, because the initial cost for an officer is about $150,000. That's the car, the uniforms, the belts, the hats, the whatever we have to buy him is about initial cost $150,000, and then the minimum salary we start people out at is $53,000 a year. So I said, listen, I get it. They're asking, everyone's asking for people, the county's growing, I get it. If you can't give me somebody, at least give me an overtime budget that I can manage. $15,000 or $20,000 a year. I'm not asking for a lot. I'm not asking for $400,000 or $500,000. But at least give me something that I can incentivize my guys to, when they have to stay, they're not, man, I gotta stay again. You know, at least give me something to reward them for dedicating their time to the cause. So we'll see how that goes. Like Robert said, we do a lot of work. We back up the Round Rock Police Department because most of our deputies are in and about Round Rock most of the time, unless we're on the west side. We do back up the sheriff's office. We take calls from the sheriff's office. Just because our main function is civil process doesn't mean that we can't act as police officers. We're fully licensed police officers just like the rest of them. But our main function is to get the civil process served. And I've got guys working traffic when you have a complaint at a school zone, out there just working traffic just for something to do if they're not busy, which sometimes we do not get busy. What else was there, Mike? Yeah, we do take environmental calls. So if, and I know Round Rock has a code enforcement division that's kind of like the same thing. If somebody in Blessing Mobile Home Park calls and says that their neighbor's not mowing their yard, we'll go take a look at it. We'll try to talk to them. Say, man, can you get it cleaned up? We'll give them a few days to get it cleaned up. If they don't, then we'll go out and write them a citation. So we are very big into community events. That's one of the things that I promoted on my campaign, and one thing that I'm going to stick with You will see us out and about at your National Night Out. I hope to be able to make it to all, however many hundred there are in my precinct. The good part about it is that the west side likes to do theirs in August, so they want to kill us with the heat. So we're going to be doing some of those in August, so it'll kind of free me up to be able to come around.
The city of Round Rock pushed us into October.
Which even then, last year
They
was
basically said,
smoking
"If
hot.
in the
So.
summer, we'll send deputy dog and that's it."
Yeah. So you know, and we've only having 8 people, or actually, I have 8 deputies, I have 3 office staff. I did take 3 people from the city of Round Rock when I left. I took a 28-year veteran, 8 years in Beaumont, 20 years he worked with me in Round Rock. He wanted to retire, so I brought him with me. I have a gentleman who was a law enforcement support technician who drove around and did all the red tags and green tags. He was a 8-year police officer in New Orleans. And I love my guys, but if I was a police chief in a large agency and I could get 180 of him with his attitude of what he's been through in New Orleans, Louisiana, and I'd take 180 of that guy all day long. I had to bring him with me. And the logistics officer is my research analyst. So we're cruising right along. We're serving our papers. We're providing extra services. If you guys have any traffic complaints or whatever, don't hesitate to call the office. We'll be more than happy. I have a very good working relationship with Chief Banks. I understand that they're a little short-handed, as it was when I worked there for a long time. So, but we're all in this together. All law enforcement, we're in this together. And I don't have a problem sending the guys out, or I'll even go out and work. Because I get a little bored sitting in the office or going to meetings all day long. So you'll see me out and about. Any questions?
What do you serve papers on mostly for? What do you say, 800?
Most of the papers we serve are
Evictions?
evictions.
Okay.
We have a lot of evictions and we have a lot of AG papers, which are child support papers. And then we have a lot of, so the process is you have to give a notice to someone to move out, and then when they don't follow that notice, they go file with the judge. It's a lengthy process. So if they decide they don't want to leave on the eviction, then we do a writ of possession. We go and take the property and give it back to the rightful owner.
Put their possessions out on the street, is there law, rules on that?
So we put it on the front yard, not blocking any kind of roadway or sidewalk. Back in '91, when I started, we couldn't do that. We had to put it in a truck and get it to a warehouse. So things have changed quite a bit since I started in the civil process part of it. But those are few and far between. We don't have, what do we have, maybe 20, 30 a year, maybe?
Evictions?
Yeah, or a month?
Probably
20 to 30 a
about
month.
15 a month, probably.
But most of the time, by the time we get there, they're gone. They leave their junk. The apartment complex or the property owner is required to have people there to clear all that stuff out. So we just oversee it to make sure that there's no interference from the previous occupant. So it's time consuming. We serve warrants. We do a lot of warrants. I know that in the month of April, we cleared up 63 warrants, which was 42 more than the previous year. So we're working really hard to try to get a lot of stuff cleaned up as far as warrants go. But of course, that's a very time consuming because you got to research, people move. There's warrants we get from '97, that are still out there. So, we're trying. We're a limited resource agency, but we are more than happy to help out in any way that we can.
What's red tag, green tag? What's that mean?
So red tag, green tag is a city ordinance thing, which we can't enforce. But if, like you'll see on the side of the road, if a vehicle's been left on the side of the road, there's a red tag on it. That means they have 48 hours to move it. The green tag process is If you have a broken down car in your driveway, it's quality of life now. If you have a broken down car in your driveway, you call the city of Round Rock, you guys do, and they send a law enforcement support technician out to check it out. Then they say, check it for red tag, they 48-hour follow-up. If the car's still in the same spot, then they go to Judge McNary and get an order signed by the judge to have the vehicle removed from the property.
My understanding is as long as the license and registration of the vehicle are current, it doesn't make any difference if it's broken down or not.
That's incorrect.
Okay,
If the
good.
vehicle is not drivable, if there's no engine in it,
As long as it's on the, oh, are you talking about the street?
no, on the property.
On the property?
Not in the garage.
That's a new one.
Not in the, can't be seen. So, yeah, they've, right before I left back in December, they were changing that up because it did tie our hands when I was with Round Rock. It did tie our hands because yes, if it had the registration inspection were good, we couldn't touch it. So they kind of tweaked it to where
That's good.
it gives us a little more, gives them now a little more authority to get that stuff out, the eyesores out of the way. Yes, sir.
Registration's expired and sitting on the street for 6 months. What do you red tag it?
So they should come by and red tag it, and most of the time, the unlaw-abiding citizen will tear it off, but they don't understand that it's already in the computer. So what they'll do is the law enforcement support technicians that the city has go around and check those. So they'll get a pop-up in 48 hours to go over and check the address, and if it's still there, then they'll call a record and they'll get rid of it.
Well, that's good to know about the license and registration. I'm glad I changed that because we do have some of that going on.
Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yes, sir.
Austin was having trouble with carbon monoxide in some of their vehicles. So are we having that in the county, the city, the constable?
So we don't have any Ford Explorers. I got a 2015 when I was in Round Rock right before I left. I had it for about 19 months, and I didn't have any problem with it. So I don't know about any of that.
Okay.
So, but I haven't heard of any in Round Rock. But
So we've got people who have nice 32, 34, 36-foot campers who will park their camper in front of their house on the curb and leave it overnight and hook it up to the hose and electricity. And I understood that was a city code violation.
it is.
If I send a tip to the Round Rock PD, I will drive by that camper later in the day and it's still sitting there. So they're too busy. But if I called your office?
We can't enforce city ordinances.
Oh, okay.
So that's a city ordinance, we can't enforce that. But it is a city ordinance, if it's over 20 foot long, it can't be on the road.
But I
for
could
more
call
than-
the city code office, couldn't I?
Good luck with that.
I know, they're busy too.
I'll be glad to tell them Mike Freeman told you about it.
Well, the problem with the code enforcement officers, and I know that Chief Rao tried to get this changed, was that they have no authority. So they wouldn't
Well,
even,
they can drain a swimming pool, but they can't get somebody to move a camper.
well, so they would call us to go over there and do that. Well, the process is very time consuming. So that's why they put on these law enforcement support technicians to go out and take the load off the officers from having to do that stuff. But, with all programs, you got 20 calls coming from Round Rock West, you got, 30 calls coming from Chisholm Trail, there's so much going on.
My house is on your way home from work.
You should know where I
We
live.
get 20 calls from Round Rock West. We have a crisis.
I'm just blowing the numbers up a little bit. But
We have a crime wave.
But like Robert said, I do not like stepping on other agencies' toes. That's, to me, that's a little unprofessional. If you do have an issue and you call me, I will direct you to the agency that you need to talk to.
That's
If you
okay.
don't get any satisfaction from them, I'll be more than happy to go out after I talk to the chief or the sheriff, only out of respect for them. And I don't want to lose that camaraderie that we have right now.
Agreed.
Because we really do have a great group of elected officials and police chiefs that are so passionate about what we do and working together to make Williamson County one of the safest places to live and the quality of life to be exceptional, that I don't want to ruin that. So we'll be more than happy to help out in any way we can, but I will go through the channels so that we don't break up that camaraderie.
Anything else? I'm gonna say something here about our law enforcement officers, and we just don't appreciate them enough. I get calls all the time, I get them like on the 4th of July. How come the police aren't out chasing the people shooting fireworks in the Marine building? How come they're not getting all the parked cars? I'd rather these guys be chasing burglars and criminals and stuff, and then if they have the time to do the other stuff. So those kind of things about number 18 on my top 5 things that I would like for them to be worried about. I mean, yes, it's important to cover those things, but these guys, we want them protecting us from things that can harm us. That's what we need them to do. We appreciate the hell out of what they do. So putting their lives on the line every day for us. So thank you guys.
Thank you. Thank you all very much. Call the office if you need anything. We're more than happy to help out.
On National Night Out, when the police officers don't show up, we let the air out of their personal car. So easy. When we had it in August, when we normally had it, we would go north of 500 people. Now we hit 250 to 300 on our National Night Out. So we hope you guys can get out.
We're going to try very, very hard.
The local law enforcement, we have probably the biggest, or if not one of the biggest
Parties. Say it's party.
at night. And we've got music, live music, and slides, and rock climbing walls, and everything else. But our law enforcement presence at that National Night Out, since we moved it to October, has gone like, and city presence.
Well, I remember when we used to fight over who's going around.
I know. But we appreciate you guys, so we appreciate you guys. Anything else before, and y'all got to hang around for a few minutes if there's any additional questions? Sure. Anything else before we break up? Thank you guys for coming. It's a great turnout tonight, so I'm happy. You know how to reach me if you have any questions.